I'd like to introduce Peggy from England, who takes LDN for chronic fatigue syndrome. Thank you for joining me, Peggy.
You're very welcome.
Could you tell us when you first started to notice there was something wrong with you?
Oh, that's easy. 1994, approximately the 26th of July. We had been on holiday, my husband and I and his father-in-law, in Cornwall, and we stopped to we stopped to look around Lou, and it was lunchtime, and I got hungry, and I didn't really want to travel to the next town, although there were limited options of where to eat, and I chose what looked like a nice sort of down a wide space between buildings in the old center of town. Outdoor place to eat. It was a lovely day. Unfortunately, the fish was polluted because my father-in-law and I both had the fish meal, and his immune system worked well, and by that evening, his body had gotten rid of everything he'd eaten. My body's immune system obviously just wasn't so effective, and it was next morning before I started with the food poisoning aftermath of diarrhea. I can't remember whether I vomited, but I don't think so. But that was Saturday, and we were moving out. So what to do about me, who needed a loo? Well, we suppressed the diarrhea. Wrong move. And we traveled from Cornwall up to Manchester, which is a lengthy journey. And I haven't been well since that day.
Wow. What happened to you once you got home?
Well, I went to the doctor when I continued to feel unwell. And unfortunately, my GP was all ill himself, and I was seeing locums, so that it was November or October before my GP, Dr. Sarma, reviewed apparently those, I suspect, those patients who were continuing to return, and told the locum what to prescribe for me. And that was to treat me for Helicobacter pylori, I learned a bit later. I felt unwell, but was able to continue to work, from the medications. It's, I think, two different things. You have to bear with me a bit. My memory-laying part of my brain did not work very well once I became ill, so I'm quite fuzzy on some things that happened. Anyway, that helped, but I continued to drag and not feel up to what I had been before that rotten meal. I later learned, a couple years later, I read that a family who played on the beach in Loo fell ill because it had at that time at least, a very polluted beach. So I wouldn't recommend Loo to anyone to either eat a fish or go on the beach. I dragged on in work off and on, in the sense that I would have periods of feeling very unwell for another year and a half almost. And it had become so that if I had an important something to do of an evening, I would take the day off because I didn't have enough energy to work and then go out. If I had and I gave up all bridge competitions after another several months. I just couldn't think very well. Finally, I had an illness after a trip to the Algarve, not caused by the trip, a head cold or something like that. And afterwards, I dragged myself into work for 3-part days, and I couldn't cope. And the following day, I just couldn't get out of bed. And I've been ill ever since. So that was April of 1996. And I haven't done a proper job since then, although I did do a little bit of typing at home.
Okay. How did you hear about LDN?
Probably from either Dr. Gilhooly or my friend who's had ME longer than I have, who was a GP,
Mm-hmm.
and she keeps abreast of things. She's now mostly recovered, but still has to be careful.
So, at that time, before you started LDN, if you had to rate your quality of life on a score of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, what would it have been?
Oh. Well, I could get out of bed, so I would give it about a 2.5.
Okay.
Maybe 3, but not more than that.
And when you started LDN, did you notice any side effects?
Sorry, we're talking LDN, not previous treatments. I would give it about a 5.
Okay, 5.
Or a 4, somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, did I have any previous treatments?
No. Did you have any side effects when you first started LDN?
No. I was introduced to it gradually. I was told to start with, I think, 2 milliliters. You know, the measurements on the syringe. Yeah, 2 milliliters.
Okay.
And then build it up about every 3 weeks, as I recall, something like that.
And do you remember how long it took before you started to feel any better?
No, I'm sorry. I just don't lay down memories the way I used to.
That's fine. And what would you say your quality of life is like today?
Well, if my gut would behave, I would have about a 7.
Mm-hmm. That's really good. So what's a typical day like for you now?
A day for me now, on a reasonably good day, would be to shower, dress. These are things I can't always feel up to doing.
Mm-hmm.
Go out to the park, take my scooter out of the car with my husband's help, and then go for a combination ride and walk. He rides the scooter for me so that when I tire, I can get back on. And that way, I can actually get a few hundred meters covered on foot. And it's getting now that I'm beginning to get some training in my muscles back after many months of not being able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
That I can walk a reasonable distance. And I can do this about every other day. I'd like it to be so that I could do it every day, that it isn't actually pouring down with rain or blowing a gale.
Yes.
Or snowing. I don't much like walking in snow.
Okay.
I read an awful lot. I watch a little television, depending on the day and how happy my brain is. I do some cross-stitch. Sometimes I'm able to chat with people. And sometimes I can play a bit of social bridge.
Mm-hmm.
And that is really a good day.
And what would you say your quality of life is like now?
I think today, not so great. It's down at about 5 again. I don't fault the LDN for that, though.
Mm-hmm.
This is a continuing problem that I have with IBS.
Right. So, most days, what's the best day score-wise would you have these days?
Oh, I'd put it up about 7.5 to 8, as long as I limit what I do and don't do too much of it.
Yes.
I'm not unhappy most of the time. I'm reasonably cheerful, reasonably content.
Mm-hmm. What would you say to other people who are thinking of trying LDN?
Oh, I would recommend it, no doubt.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah. If they can find someone who will prescribe for them.
Yeah. Well, that's really helpful. Well, thank you very much for sharing your experience with us.
You're very welcome.